We want to welcome you and thank you for coming. And members are going to be in and out because it is the House of Representatives and everybody's got a lot of conflicts. But I want to thank all of you for being here, and I want to all of our colleagues, and you can just see by the diversity of people that are here about how excited we are to launch this Congress today. We're here because we want to ensure that people understand how important the heartland is in this country, how much this region is the backbone of America. The urban areas where each of the urban, you've got Cleveland and Detroit and Chicago, and how much commerce went through there as the country was built, is still going there. And that the urban areas, Andre Carson's trying to get here, but was talking about how we even have food deserts and how the issues are different there. We are the breadbasket, we help feed America and the world, and we are the manufacturing belt. This region helped build the country into what it is today. It's called the Heartland because it is the nation's manufacturing and the manufacturing and farming sectors, as well as these urban cities and the small towns, are what built this country. Reality is the Heartland is the industrial and the agriculture core of the U.S. It grew America. Our states are rich in resources, the most important of which is the hard-working men and women who live, work, and raise their families here, and who keep our nation running. And of course, we're home to the Great Lakes, a national treasure that we literally could not live without. 20% of the world's, more than 20% of the world's fresh water. For thousands of years and across generations of Americans, no other freshwater system in the world has inspired such great economic prosperity, quality of life, or binational unity than the waters of Lake Michigan, Lake Superior, Lake Huron, Lake Erie, and Lake Ontario. So why are we doing this? The Heartland Caucus is going to serve to elevate and engage on the most important issues that are facing our communities, from urban issues, manufacturing, labor, agriculture, to racial equity, rural health care, to broadband infrastructure and the environment. We must ensure that as we're creating policy here in Washington, we are prioritizing the views, the values, and issues of these communities at home that are too often overlooked, not integrated into policy consideration and for congressional action. To be clear, all roads to majorities and to the White House go through the heartland of America. Woo! I'm thankful to all the members who are joining me in this effort to fight. I mean, we got a great caucus. And you know what? Everybody you see here, the meetings we've had, everybody's getting on. And we're having the best kind of conversations you're supposed to have in this place. The ideas of how do you use our strengths, from the academic centers to and everybody's, Bill Foster, who's our physicist, has some of the best. I mean, you just can't believe what kind of real discussions. And Cori Bush and Andre Carson and Ilhan are staying on the whole. I mean, it's a group of diverse people who love where we come from, and we know how important it is. John Steinbeck said, "It seemed to me that the earth was generous and outgoing here in the heartland, and perhaps the people took a cue from it." And Evan Bayh said, "Our success will largely be determined by how well we do here in the heartland. The time has come to be secure about it. The time has come to lead." And that is why we are here. And I'm going to start, we'll just go in order. I'll leave this up here. And I'm going to introduce the Dean of the Heartland area, Marcy Capter, next. And then Marcy, if you'll introduce, look at the list, everybody. We love you. She's our Dean.
Thank you for being here. Good morning. Boy, this is quite a crowd. Congratulations, Debbie, for all your hard work to gather us together. I'm going to be a little more, let's say, observant about history, okay? And during my tenure here, the leadership has largely come from the coasts. And you can look at the leadership today versus just a couple years ago, and you can see who's missing. We're generally missing in this part of the country. Now, I come from the Great Lakes watershed, so I come from Ohio. Our lives depend on Canada, as well as the United States. They're our largest trading partner, and we share the largest body of fresh water on the continent, and it has real challenges. When I look at the funding in bills that several Congresses have approved, I see that organizations like the Bureau of Reclamation receive billions. That isn't true with our region. And so we have to speak louder and more forcefully. And I want to congratulate Debbie and all the people who are here today, the members who are here, for their focus. My particular focus on the Heartland involves all of the channels that lead to the Great Lakes. When the region drains, most of the water comes into the Great Lakes region. It's the largest body of fresh water on the continent, as Congresswoman Dingell mentioned, but also on Earth. And we are facing a situation where most of our large cities have bonded indebtedness in the billions of dollars because the federal government has not understood what this region requires in order to pass it to the next generation in better condition than we found it. So I'm very proud to be a member of this group. And were we to just take the region that I'm from, and we can talk about Missouri, others will talk about other states, but we, along with Canada, would be the third largest nation in the world. If you look at the size of our economy and the necessity that we have in order to help rebuild places like Flint, Michigan, Lorain, Ohio, Kenosha, Wisconsin, the list is long. These are places that have been depleted right now. Belleville, Illinois, which I think, who is that?
That's me.
That's you.
13, yeah.
All right. We know that Stellantis Jeep, it has threatened dislocation to a place south of the border, and our region has had massive job loss. And we need more attention by the people in this chamber, and I guess Debbie, your hard work in pulling this together will help us reach that dream. But we have had such serious job loss. Some of those in the private sector say this is creative destruction, what many of our communities have faced. Well, we want aggressive reinvestment. And this is part of whether it is the Mississippi corridor, whether it is the Great Lakes. We passed out for the Great Lakes region a proposal called the Great Lakes Authority, which passed in the last Congress, that will gather us in a new way to begin to piece together the pieces of a dream that can help us more easily transition to 21st century technologies and opportunities. I think Bill Foster represents the only federally supported research lab, high science, in the area. Am I right about that?
Two of them.
Which is,
Two
you
of
represent two of them?
Fermi Lab and Argonne.
Oh, Fermi and Argonne. Okay, that's all we have. I was out in California, Northern California, and I'll end with this. And I spent time with our dear colleague, Barbara Lee, who's running for Senate in California. And we were with 12,000 PhDs in Northern California. And I thought to myself, 12,000? How interesting. How much do we have in our region? I'll tell you, Ohio doesn't have anything. So, and neither does Michigan, in terms of the kind of federal brain power that takes to help places move forward. So I will end my remarks there and just say that onward, Heartland Caucus. Thank you for being here. All right. Okay. Oh, dear. Our esteemed colleague, hard-working colleague on so many levels, Dan Schakowsky of Chicago, Illinois, who understands this struggle very well.
Thank you. Marcy Kaptur, the longest-serving woman in the House of Representatives. So we're very proud of you. So I want to thank Debbie Dingell for really pulling us all together. We are the Heartland Caucus, and I was born and raised and live in Chicago, just a stone's throw really from Lake Michigan. It's already been said, but the Great Lakes are the largest, represent 20% of all of the surface fresh water in the world. So we need to take care we need to put resources into making sure that's there, especially in a time of water shortages all over the country. I am very proud to be on Chicago's branch of the of Lake Michigan, and I like to say that we have 20 beaches, no sharks. You know, that's an attraction, I think, that, you know, for us. Our region, we are hardworking, we are plain talking, nothing fancy, but we are the heart. We are the heart of the heartland. We are the bread basket and the lunch bucket in the United States. Chicago, and much of us, Chicago's a labor town. A lot of history of the birth and development of organized labor in the heartland. You know, there was a time when the heartland was called the Rust Belt, and we saw jobs, as mentioned, that jobs were gone to first south for cheaper labor, then overseas. We saw our plants closed. But I want to tell you, we are absolutely coming back. And you know, Chicago has long been, you know, we are really a hub of innovation right now. A lot of things that come on environment are being done in our area. We also have tremendous educational institutions. We have research institutions that are doing leading work in the rest of the country. Let me just say one other thing about the heartland. Decades ago, there was the Great Migration from the South, when people came to up north for the good jobs, the opportunities, and in a way, what we're seeing now is that the heartland is the place people want to come to for good jobs and good wages and innovation. And so I just want to say how proud I am as a Chicagoan, as a Midwestern person, and as a part of this coalition, that we want to make sure that the proper amount of attention, that we aren't just a flyover part of the United States, that we are at the heart, not only the center of the country, but we are the heart of the future for our families and for our children. So thank you very much, and now let me ask, who am I asking? Yeah, Mike Quigley will be next to speak.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, ask the guy who lives across the street from Wrigley Field. Talk about the Midwest. And I got notes from my staff. It says, open with jokes about the West Coast. It's too easy. Too easy. Look, no one's talked about food yet. Please. Chicago hot dogs, Chicago pizza, Italian beefs. You should put your convention in Chicago. You should do mostly restaurants, and you should talk to the folks back here because Chicago knows what it's doing. Look, my predecessor in Congress, Rahm Emanuel, I think it was his name, went on to something else. He used to say, hey, if it rolls, floats, or flies, it goes through Chicago. And folks, the Midwest, world's busiest airport. And there's a reason while the rest of the country might have thought, oh, let's go to the Sun Belt. You know, all of a sudden, where's the water? Where's the future? Where's the hope? It's with an extraordinary workforce and the natural resources necessary to move forward battling issues like climate change.
We're agriculture and also manufacturing. This is very close to my heart. I'm best known as being, the only PhD physicist in Congress, but I'm also a businessman who has manufactured for many decades in the heartland. Not many people know that when the lights go up on Broadway or touring rock and roll shows go through, that is actually the majority of that equipment is manufactured in Mazomanie, Wisconsin, or in Middleton, Wisconsin. And it has been programmed for decades by
That's your
this.
company, right?
That's company. I started it with my little brother. My little brother when I was 19 and he was 17. That's a long story. But the point is, you can compete in the Heartland. And one of the reasons you can compete so well is that we have a stream of really highly educated, competent, hardworking men and women coming out of the universities in the area. And that is a resource that we have to continue to capitalize as manufacturing gets more and more technological. So there's a lot of good news, and you're going to be hearing about it from this caucus. Thank you all. And next on the list is Joyce Beatty.
Thank you, Bill. First of all, let me just say good morning, and I am Congresswoman Joyce Beatty from the great state of Ohio. But Debbie Dingell, let me just say thank you for pulling us together, and always we give honor to our dean from Ohio, I might add, Congresswoman Marcy Kaptur. So much has been said, so let me paint a picture for you, in part why I believe it's important for us to be there. Because when I think of the Heartland, you just heard it. So many contributions to our nation. I'm reminded of the resilience, the hardworking Americans who built this country on their backs. Astronaut John Glenn, astronauts who stepped first on the moon, known and unknown, black heroes and sheroes and civil rights leaders, poets and authors like Paul Laurence Dunbar. And we've heard about flying over the great Heartland, the Wright brothers, the first to take to flight. I could talk about medicine and education and educators in the Ohio State University. Leaders and activists who before and now, like the Reverend Jesse Jackson and so many others who marched for freedom. We stand on the shoulders, the Heartland shoulders. And so today I stand with my colleagues representing that Heartland, being from the great Midwest. But we stand strong with our Democratic colleagues, whether from the East or the West or South. So this is about unity and not about divide. It's about recognition, and it's about us saying we have found our place, and we are very comfortable being from the Heartland. Thus the press conference to share with you all that we have gathered, but to let you know as media, there's so much more to come because of our power and because of our unity. And let me just end with this. When we think of the 50-some billion dollars to protect our national security, the CHIPS Act, to make sure that there are more jobs, it was because of our work that the great state of Ohio received $20 billion for Intel. It's important today because that's our future. We must make sure that there's more jobs, that there's ample housing, and so much more. It is the Midwest that shepherds America's rich manufacturing tradition by ushering that new Silicon Heartland. Thousands of good jobs will be there, bringing the computer chip production back to the United States. Doesn't it sound good? Silicon in the Heartland. So just as we know, we had a rough beginning, but being gathered here today allows us to continue our drive, our energy, to make sure that all of you report it is all about the Heartland. And now it gives me great pleasure to introduce Sean Caston.
Thank you all. Thank you, Joyce. Debbie and Marcy, thank you for setting this up. I'm Sean Caston, represent the 6th District in Illinois, western suburbs of Chicago, southwest suburbs of Chicago. I didn't grow up in the Heartland. I grew up in New York, grew up in New England area, lived there, didn't move to Chicago until 2007, which means that, which means that for the first 36 years of my life, I grew up on eating food that was grown in the heartland and using manufactured goods that were produced in the heartland, and I thought I earned that all on myself, right? And the reason I moved to Chicago wasn't to get into politics. I mean, look, you got a better path to leadership if you stay on the coasts in our caucus. but because I was starting up a company where we were building and taking over energy assets inside of industrial facilities that made stuff. And if I wanted to hire people who knew how America makes things, who knew how America grows things, who knew how to attract the talent, that understood the operational challenges of running those assets, I had to be in the Midwest. I couldn't get those people on the coasts. And long story short, here I am now in Congress, and we are still the area that makes stuff. We are still the area that grows stuff. We're still the area where the people who know how to make and grow stuff, even if they're not in that specific line of work, this is where they live. And this is not to diminish we have different skills in different parts of our caucus, in different parts of the country. This isn't about diminishing that stuff. We would, the amazing financial expertise on our East Coast that figured out how to finance and build all the stuff that we have. The huge wind corridor that comes up the Mississippi River. Somebody had to figure out how to structure that, and we use a lot of that expertise. Building the manufacturing facilities, the whole renewable fuels industry, a lot of that's financed on the East Coast. God bless them. We're grateful to have that. Somebody on the other coast had to make movies about fields of dreams. They're inspiring, but the fields of dreams are in the heartland. And somebody on the coast had to get kids excited about farming with Farmville, and I'm glad they did that, but the farms are in the heartland. So grateful to have this caucus here to elevate those needs, to make sure that the voices of those communities and the skills and the talents and the dreams that they represent are represented in the Congress. So thank you so much for doing this. I'm now going to turn over to my friend, Angie Craig from Minnesota.
Great. Well, thank you, Sean, and especially thank you, Debbie, for putting this group together. My name is Angie Craig, and I have the distinct pleasure of representing Minnesota's 2nd Congressional District, home to about 4,000 family farms. So just say thank you to my pig producers as you eat those hot dogs there in Chicago every single day. Look, I came to Minnesota about 20 years ago, and the reason I ended up there is to help lead a medical manufacturing company. In Minnesota, we don't call ourselves the Democratic Party. We call ourselves the Democratic Farmer Labor Party, because as we think about the coalition of Americans, the coalition of Heartland Caucus members we need in order to take back the gavels, and I'm just going to be clear about this, some of the people standing behind me, including myself, come from the toughest districts in America for Democrats to come back to Congress. I'm one of those. I'm the least Democratic congressional district in the state of Minnesota. Midwestern states, the heartland is critical to the success of America. We've talked about our family farmers, we've talked about manufacturing, we've talked about protecting the national resources and addressing the climate issues that address across this nation. So I am just so happy to be here today representing the Heartland, really proud of the diverse group of Heartland members that have come to Congress, that work together. Hell, if we can find consensus in the Heartland, surely we can find consensus in the Democratic Party. And if we can find consensus in the Democratic Party, you're going to make sure that we have those gavels back in the next Congress. So from the least Democratic district in Minnesota, it's my pleasure to introduce the most Democratic district in Minnesota, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar. Thank you.
Thank you, Angie, for never letting me forget that. Thank you, Debbie and Marcy, for convening us. It is a great honor to be here and to be with so many members from the Heartland. I represent Minnesota's 5th Congressional District. We are a cold state, but the people have warm hearts in Minnesota. And make no mistake, we are not flyover country. The Twin Cities, where I represent Minneapolis and my twin sister, Betty McCollum, represents St. Paul, regularly is listed as top of the best places to raise a family. And we have more than 500 Fortune 500 companies per capita than any other big city in the country. We continue to grow in population while other states are losing population because there are jobs, there are opportunities, and most importantly, we take care of one another. We know that people don't just need jobs, they need good jobs, and they need policies like childcare, paid leave, school lunch to ease their economic burdens. That's why we prioritize legislation that many of our colleagues in Minnesota are championing right now at the Capitol, including universal school meals, universal child care, student debt cancellation. And I will just end with this. The Heartland is not monolith. It includes immigrant communities, Black communities, farm workers, blue-collar workers, and entrepreneurs. And I will say this, many people don't know, but Illinois, Michigan, and Minnesota probably has the most Muslims in the country. So when you think about the Heartland, remember these faces because we represent the Heartland. My sister, who I get the honor of being on the Education and Labor Committee with, Representative Haley Stevens of Michigan.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you to my friend and colleague, Debbie Dingell, for organizing the Heartland Caucus. Thank you, Marcy Kaptur, for your unwavering leadership for the Midwest and for the Heartland. I represent Oakland County, Michigan, the heart of Automation Alley, the heart of our manufacturing sector in Michigan. And when I think about the work of this caucus and the work that the members who represent this caucus bring to the Congress, we think about the unlikely coalitions that emerge from the Midwest to deliver results for the United States of America. When we seek to pass a trade deal and industry and labor come together to renegotiate NAFTA to build American products in our neighborhoods. When we pass the largest climate bill in the history of this nation, it was industry and environmental groups that emerged from the Midwest that said, we are going to make electric vehicles in the United States of America, and it is going to happen in the Heartland. It is going to happen in Michigan, where the automobile was created. When we needed to pass a Chips and Science Act, it was the voices from the Midwest that rose up that said, we need this and we need this now. We were the early drumbeat of action. And we certainly will be the proliferating destination for those investments and for the jobs of the future. And so we continue to lead the way for the environment, for our manufacturing sector, and for all the things that continue to propel this nation forward. Thank you so much, my colleagues. And with that, I got a great colleague to introduce, someone who represents a lot of what's amazing about the Midwest. I got most spirited in middle school, okay? That's Rashida. Come on up here, Rashida. Most spirited.
Yes, me too. Thank you so much. Just to piggyback on what Congresswoman Stevens said, I represent the Congressional District 12. I come from, literally the Motor City. We put folks on wheels. When instantly, I think when Debbie Dingell said to me, I want to create a Heartland Caucus. I want to get us all together. We got to make sure that we're at the table when it comes to some of these major legislative policy changes, and to make sure that again, we're not just folks are not just flying over, and understanding the critical importance of our region to the economy. So a lot of folks don't realize, Michigan in general, we have we're going to have 3 international crossings. A quarter of our trade comes through Michigan. Over 25% of our trade comes through Michigan. Our most important trade partner, Canada, is right there. Many of us understand that because we come from states with similar issues. I grew up, of course, in the shadows of one of the busiest trade corridor in the country, of 10,000 trucks coming through the neighborhood. So when Haley says we're also looking at the environment and what we can do in regards to making sure that, again, we can do it in a way that protects the public health. But I tell you, I am incredibly proud because I know for a fact that, our regions, our communities, we birth movements. We really have. If it's not just obviously manufacturing, building the vehicles, building building up the supply chain logistics industry, but we also birth movements in trying to organize workers. I mean, this is, literally many of us come from hometowns where labor was so critically important to build up black wealth, so we can increase home ownership to many of our families, especially in Detroit. And so it's critically important that we bring our own lived experiences and understanding how that's all connected through the Heartland Caucus. We also have been really at the front line when it comes to clean water. If it wasn't for Debbie Dingell, I would have never been able to successfully get $1.1 billion to stop water shutoffs. And the fact that we have to now recognize the importance of the crisis of the increased cost of water. So talking about water infrastructure, talking about the fact that we need a significant impact to get lead out of water. And many of my many of my colleagues, including the bipartisan Get the Lead Out Caucus, we understand there is not one congressional district that is not impacted by that. But I know the Heartland Caucus, specifically Michigan, yes, because of a crisis in our home, in our backyard, which was awful. But we learned a lot, and we're teaching other states and other communities of how to do it right. How we can actually make sure lead is removed out of these pipes, because we learned a lot from Flint. These are things that we can bring into the room. And so I'm really incredibly proud to be part of the Heartland Caucus. I can tell you, we're going to be really tenacious, because Debbie Dingell is tenacious. I know that she is very tenacious, and will continue to push forward on a lot of our agendas. But I love this because I can be someone like me who, poverty, issues around immigration reform, all these things, of course, are at the heart of, why I ran and why I want to, again, importance of economic rights for our community. But to be in a room to talk to my colleagues about job creation, economic development, even urban farming, and coming together in a commonality of that, it is something that inspires me to be an active member of the Heartland Caucus, and I'm really looking forward to helping everyone and to, again, bringing people in the room that, again, sometimes are left out. With that, I want to introduce Rep. Eric Sorensen.
My name is Eric Sorensen. I represent Illinois' 17th Congressional District, which includes Bloomington, Normal, Peoria, Moline, Rock Island, and Rockford, Illinois. I'm proud to be from Rockford, Illinois, which is home of Cheap Trick. One of my favorite songs from Cheap Trick is Never Surrender. And in the Heartland, we never surrender. Thank you to Representative Dingell. Being new to Congress, I know you're not supposed to say yes so quickly, but when Debbie Dingell called me up and she said, Eric, would you be part of the Heartland Caucus? I said yes. And then I thought, what did I just say yes to? But I am so proud to be here with so many of my colleagues today. America's Heartland is where we build things. It's where the first car was manufactured. In my district, it's where the first plow was manufactured. You may have heard of a guy named John Deere. Well, John Deere and Company is headquartered about a mile from my house. We build the harvesters in my district. We build the seeding in my district. And we're proud that Deere is making an investment in the future with electric plows, which will certainly be a game changer. Workforce in the Heartland is unique, and it's where families in the country go to settle down. We represent industry, manufacturing, new ideas that move us forward, and through this caucus, we're going to grow American innovation and sustain the growth that our nation is going to need, not only for us here today, but it's for our kids and for our grandkids. So I look forward to working with my colleagues from all different spectrums and all different types of districts so that we can fight together to create and protect the jobs, grow manufacturing, and keep us moving forward. And with that, I'd like to welcome Debbie Dingell back to the podium for any questions. Oh, is there more? Oh, I still have
Nikki.
Nikki Budzinski, my good friend. Where's Nikki? I thought that I was going to be the last person.
Oh, no, that's okay.
But Nikki is wonderful, and I can't wait to work in a hardworking district like Nikki's in Illinois 13.
Thank you. A fellow downstate Illinois member. I want to thank Congresswoman Dingell and Congresswoman Capter, of course, for bringing us all together. My name's Nikki Budzinski. I just got elected to represent the 13th Congressional District in Illinois. I represent Central and Southern Illinois. My hometown is Springfield. I'm a trade unionist that decided to run for Congress to work each and every day to be an advocate for working people. In addition to that, I very much believe that rural communities like those that I have the opportunity, the privilege to represent, deserve a seat at the leadership table on both sides of the aisle. And that's what really drew me to the work of the Heartland Caucus. I think it's critically important that we continue to elevate rural community voices, and I look forward to working with my esteemed colleagues in the Heartland Caucus on issues like bringing back American manufacturing, investing in rural revitalization. I'm hoping to have the opportunity to serve on our House Agriculture Committee to work on a farm bill, which I think is also critically important. So there are a lot of really important issues that I know connect each and every one of us throughout this caucus, and I look forward to working with them. So thank you so much. Thank you. Oh, and I'm sorry. I have the privilege of introducing Congressman Jonathan Jackson, my good friend. Sorry.
Thank you, Congresswoman Nikki Budzinski. I'm Jonathan Jackson, representing Illinois' 1st Congressional District. I'd like to say a very special thank you to Congresswoman Dingell for convening us and bringing us together, Congresswoman Capter and Jan Chakowski, and my Congressional Black Caucus former chair, Congresswoman Beatty. I'm here representing the 1st District. My district is both urban, suburban, and rural. We take a position on farming all the way through what's affecting the opioid crisis in the rural, the urban, and the rural communities. The Midwest is where the water comes through, it's where the rail comes through, it's where the airwaves are also a part of our distribution. So why are we here today? To help strengthen our caucus within the Democrats, that these are communities that are at the front line. Every state here is on the front line in Wisconsin and Michigan and Ohio and Indiana and Illinois. We have to strengthen and expand our base. And the last part is we have our feet on the ground on what affects most Americans. And so this caucus, the idea was a time that has come. It was long overdue. Thank you for your leadership and bringing us together. And the stronger we are and the more these persons' voices are represented, the stronger the party will be and the stronger the nation. It is my pleasure to introduce, I'm Jonathan Jackson, so that's the Honorable Congresswoman Amelia Sykes. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon or good morning, everyone. There's just one more speaker left, so hang in there with us. Good morning again, and thank you to Congresswoman Dingell and, of course, our Dean, Marcy Capter, for convening this very important caucus, the Heartland Caucus, which I am very honored and proud to be a part of. My name is Amelia Sykes, and I am honored to represent Ohio's 13th Congressional District. So when you think of steel, when you think of rubber, when you think of polymers, or the greatest basketball player in the entire world, you think of Ohio's 13th Congressional District. And Ohio, like much of the Midwest, used to be a place where you could fulfill the promise of the American dream. But for too long, Ohio has been left out and behind in the national conversation. And when I was elected, I made it very clear to the voters and constituents in Ohio that I am going to take the voices of Ohio 13 with me to Capitol Hill, and the Heartland Caucus allows me to do it with the force of many. The voices of the Heartland will never be forgotten on my watch, and with those of here who are standing with me and not here today. And my colleagues and I are committed to building an economy that works for everyone, from Americans in rural communities in Ohio 13 to suburbs and to large urban metropolitan cities. We are bringing back good paying union jobs with major economic developments like the Intel multi-billion-dollar factory. Now that is in Columbus, but we are sure surely going to feel the effects of that, the ripple effects throughout the state of Ohio and in the heartland. We are repairing our roads and our bridges and expanding public transportation with a bipartisan infrastructure law, and we are investing in small and minority-owned businesses that comprise the backbone of our local economies with funding programs like the Capital Readiness Grant from the Department of Commerce that was just announced with Secretary Raimondo last week in Cleveland. But this is only the start. There's still so much work to be done. The Midwest and the Heartland is full of opportunity for investment, development, and innovation. And together, my colleagues and I will make sure that the national spotlight is on the Heartland and we will deliver real results for the American people. And so now I get to introduce to you all a little-known product of Ohio's 13th Congressional District, Sri Tanadar.
You're the greatest basketball player.
Thank you, Congresswoman Sykes. Thank you. I don't know, there are three congresswomen here, great women, congresswomen from Ohio. Marcy Kaptur, previous CBC leader, Joyce Berry. Ohio is special to me. Now, my name is Sri Thanidar.
Except in football time.
I'm representing Detroit, Michigan, in the 13th Congressional District from Michigan as the newest elected congressperson from there. I must confess that when growing up, I didn't want to be a fireman. I didn't want to be a pilot. I wanted to be a polymer chemist. I wanted to make electric batteries. Back then, when nobody was talking about electric batteries, pre-Google days, growing up in poverty in India, when I was 24 years old, I said, where is the best polymer research in the world? And guess what my research showed? It was in Congresswoman Sykes' district, Akron, Ohio. Right. Akron, Ohio. And that's where I came to get my PhD. They paid me $300 a month. I sent $75 home so my mother can put food on the table. So Ohio let us feed our family. And I became the second PhD scientist other than Bill Foster in this Congress. So got my PhD in Akron, Ohio, went to Ann Arbor, Michigan, did my postdoc, and then went to Missouri, started a small manufacturing research company that created 500 jobs. And so that's who I am. That's what Heartland has done to me, and I want to thank Debbie Dingell. She called me to join this, and whenever Debbie calls, I heard the president say even that when Debbie says something, he does it. And yesterday we were at the White House as they welcomed us as a new Congress member, and the president talked about the Heartland with fond ideas. So your influence goes all over here, Debbie. You're very powerful, and I'm so glad to be working with you. So here I am representing Detroit, the two big bridges, the commerce, the billions of dollars of commerce happening internationally. The car capital, my colleagues Rashida, Haley have spoken about greatness of Michigan, so I won't repeat that. But there is so much we can do. I stayed in the Midwest. It helped me do what I needed to do personally. I'm passionate about entrepreneurship. I'm passionate about bringing entrepreneurship, business ownership to small, low-income families all across. And so I'm excited to be part of this caucus, and let's go make things happen. Thank you.
So we're gonna, I know it's late, it went long, but we wanted you to see the diversity, how the Heartland is strong, and how we are all talking to each other, listening. You can't believe the meetings we've already had, and how we're going to support issues that are going on in Detroit and Chicago, etc. But the Farm Bill's up this year. We're all going to be a voice for the Farm Bill, and how we're bringing jobs back home and putting them in the Midwest. And we're going to do it supporting each other. So we'll answer any questions. Some people may have to go. I just want to say the Heartland Caucus will not be quiet. It will be effective. And everybody here has everybody else's back as we fight for the districts that we represent. Thank you. My sister Joyce. Question?
So I
And ask anybody. This is a we.
Okay, yeah, so I know you guys have added many of your frontliners, you added a new battleground leader position to the leadership table. How hopeful are you that that's going to increase and expand kind of the messaging and aspect of getting Midwestern representation? And then for those of you who ran on progressive platforms in your districts, can you talk about how progressive messaging can actually be a win in the Midwest, which seems to be kind of a misconception at times too?
I think you're talking about Democratic messaging continues to be a win in the Midwest. Certainly, we saw that in Michigan with our governor winning, our Secretary of State, and our Democratic Attorney General, and 7 out of the 13 members who won. And certainly, we're pleased to see Abigail Spanberger as a former frontliner. Pleased to see her take on that battleground role. And this purpose of this caucus is to make sure that the Heartland, the Midwest, has a voice in our policy making. As we had major legislative wins last term in a Democratic majority, it was Heartland that played a role in making sure we got that done.
And let me just add to that the messages are the same. Creating that new position is something that allows us to get our message out. It's all about the people. When you look at the states that we represent, and if you take the great state of Ohio, brand new district there, history repeats itself. 10 years ago, Ohio became effective and we won a new seat. We won a new seat that was a 50-50 seat that could have gone either way. But to Haley's point, it was the voice of the Democrats. It was the message. Frontline person, just as the new position, just as being progressive. What we've realized is our diversity is our strength, but it is our unity that's our power.
There's a reason they call them Midwestern values, right? Name another region of the country where you say, what's like a good set of values? You say Midwestern values, right? There's a reason why all those like purple seats are in the middle of the country. And look, as Democrats, we want them to be blue, but we elect people who speak to both parties, right? And I say this as a guy who, I flipped a seat. I represent the seat that was once held by Henry Hyde, and I am unabashedly 100% pro-choice, and I don't get a lot of pushback on it. These are American values and they're Midwestern values, but I think everybody up here has a way of communicating that doesn't force people to go to their corners.
I have a bit of a message regarding Abigail Spanberger and her important appointment as a frontliner, because I've been a frontliner and probably will be again. But if you note, she's from Virginia. And so the way I received that message is the leadership got it half right. They need someone from the Heartland. And part of our challenge is we have no one from the leadership in any position from the Heartland. So this is one of the realities that we face over and over and over again. And I have to say, on behalf of the Biden administration and Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, this is the first administration in my service of 40 years that has actually passed bills that are already having enormous impact in our part of the country. Congresswoman Beatty's talked about the impact of Intel in Ohio. Whether it's that, whether it's the $1 billion of extra funds in the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, or whether it's the rebuilding of the Sioux Lock finally, after 40 years. I mean, it's too much. Too many presidents have been absent from the reality of our region. So I just want to send a message that we have very talented people in the Heartland, and they deserve a place on the Democratic side of the aisle and the Republican.
And can I just piggyback on that, because while that is so true, I always like to look at the glass more half full. So when we think of steering in policy, which is one of the most powerful, we have people from the Midwest for the first time in large numbers. We have whips like Jan Zykowski that's there. We have Lauren Underwood, who serves with the communication. So we have, with this administration and with this caucus chair, been able to start to turn that, because what Marcy said is so true. And we heard that when we gathered at our first time to elect people. People heard more about the Heartland and the Midwest in speeches. And as a result of that, we have a caucus. We have people in powerful positions within our caucus. So I just want you to be real clear. It's one message. It's one message, and that message will be even stronger because of the Heartland.
And Joyce is on the unity. I want to say Hakeem, Catherine Clark, and Pete Aguilar hear us, are working with us, and we're going to be united. So, I mean, this is, I really want that to be.
Thank you.
All right, you can hit us one-on-one.